Hello, welcome everybody. I'm starting to see some folks drop in the webinar. Wonderful to have you. My name is Adam Seidel. I'm the Managing Director of Program for OneGoal, Massachusetts. Joining us today will be Morgan Taylor, Director of Program in Massachusetts and former OneGoal Program Director. Morgan was actually a Program Director at one of our partner schools and has now joined our team to support Program Directors all across Massachusetts. We'll also be joined by Lunessa Charles, who's a OneGoal alumni, high school class of 2020. So today is really all about Morgan and Lunessa and what we can learn from their relationship about mentoring. And it is truly a huge professional pleasure for me to host this space because I've actually known Lunessa for over 10 years, since she was a sixth grader at a school where I was an administrator, long before OneGoal actually brought us back together. And so I know for all the educators and mentors joining us today, you can really resonate with how amazing it is to stay involved with young people you have taught or mentored and then see them thriving just as Lunessa is, and you'll hear so much more about that later. And so it is just a joy for me to welcome both of them and to be able to lead this space with them. Before we get into the conversation though, I do want to share a little quick information about our organization, particularly for those who are joining us for the first time. OneGoal's mission is to close the degree divide in America. We know that students from low income and high income communities aspire to complete their post-secondary education at similar rates, but those from low income communities, the majority of whom are students of color, face enormous systemic barriers to earn their degrees. And this is an injustice that was made even worse by COVID-19. As a result, hundreds of thousands of young people transition to adulthood without the skills, experiences, and credentials needed to build careers and the lives of their choosing. Currently, only 22% of students from low-income communities earn a post-secondary degree, either a bachelor's or an associate's, compared to 67% of their peers from high-income areas. We know that it doesn't have to be the case, and our vision at OneGoal is that every young person will have an equitable opportunity to achieve their greatest post-secondary aspiration. This year, OneGoal will reach over 15,000 students across our classroom-based model in 6 regions and our post-secondary leadership network in Illinois and Kentucky. You can learn more about OneGoal by visiting the link that our team is dropping in the chat. Please do, and please follow up if you have more questions. We love to talk more about our work. Right now, OneGoal offers a set of services aligned with a core belief that in order to meaningfully change post-secondary outcomes for students, we have to pursue a sort of two-pronged strategy. Number one, build the capacity of adults in the system beyond teachers and counselors. And number two, deliver content and curriculum directly to students. Just like math and English are taught to students, we believe post-secondary planning must be explicitly taught to students and teachers, and staff must be coached to effectively deliver that content knowledge. Now, I know that we're here to talk today about the importance of mentorship to support students' post-secondary aspirations, but before we get into the conversation, we want to do one more quick poll. So please take a moment to access the poll and share with us why you think mentoring is important for students as they pursue their post-secondary path. The poll should be launched, and please take a moment to tell us why you think mentorship is important. Great, thank you all for taking a moment to do that. Excited to see some of the responses coming through. All right, appreciate you all for taking a second to do that. It's always great to see what everyone is bringing into the conversation. And so just so you know, if you answered one of the first 4, you were correct because it is all of the above. And really all of these pieces, the personal connection, consistent support, information sharing, and developing a long-term relationship are all critically important and speak to the importance of mentorship. For us, at the end of the day, mentorship is about relationships and caring. And over the last few weeks, as we've been preparing for this, I've been reflecting on really what that has meant for me, what I know that means for others, and want to offer this quote from Maya Angelou because I think it speaks so directly to the heart of what makes mentorship so important and so unique. And Maya Angelou wrote, "In order to be a mentor and an effective one, one must care. One must care. You don't have to know how many square miles are in Idaho. You don't need to know what is the chemical makeup of chemistry, or of blood or water. Know what you know and care about the person. Care about what you know and care about the person you are sharing with." That level of knowing, seeing, caring, and developing strong bonds and relationships is at the heart of mentorship. And we are excited to explore that further today. January is National Mentorship Month. Mentoring relationships, we know, are so critical to education work. They include the personal connections that we talked about, consistent support, information sharing, and building that long-term relationship. I personally didn't have OneGoal when I was in high school, but I was very fortunate to have two mentors play a critical role in my life and my post-secondary planning. One was a coach and one was a supervisor in a summer youth program. Together, they helped me see my best self and really see what is possible for myself in the future. And I am forever grateful to both Malcolm Mitchell and Meg Coward who played that role in my life. At OneGoal, we know that building relationships is a key part of closing the degree divide. Program directors at OneGoal build long-term relationships with their fellows. They do that to understand their unique circumstances, their values, their needs, their aspirations. They help them explore those ambitions and dreams, and they provide social emotional support to build problem-solving skills. They're the person on the other end of the phone when they face a challenge or when they want to celebrate a success. That is the key to our work, and that is a key to the sort of mentorship relationship that our program directors and our fellows build. Our program is designed to do this. We build strong mentorship relationships between program directors and fellows. After 2 years of a teacher and student working together every day of their junior and senior year, our program directors continue to support their students, their fellows, as mentors during their first year of post-secondary. And now I'm excited because we get to see this in action. The most critical work we do is being done in our regions, in our classrooms, in the one-on-one conversations that students and teachers have every day. It's in the text messages, the FaceTimes, all of those things that bring it to life. So please join me in welcoming Morgan and Lunessa to help share their experience. All right, I think I see you all on this Zoom world, which is great. Would rather see you in person, but here we are. And I'm so excited to just take some time to let you all tell your own story and the story of the work that you all have done together and where you are and where you want to be and how the mentorship relationship has formed. So what I'd love to do is just start with you, Morgan, and sort of if you could just tell us a little bit about how did you get started with OneGoal and what drove you to kind of continue the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, hi everyone. So OneGoal has been part of my story since 2018. So I've known Adam for about 5 years now. It all started, my principal told me about a program and I met staff from the OneGoal team. They came in, did a class observation. We talked about what OneGoal programming would look like. And I really didn't know until I knew. And I have had 3 cohorts since then, before joining staff last summer, Lunessa being in the first cohort that I've had. And I just have always known OneGoal would be part of my journey. OneGoal, I was introduced to it within my first year of teaching, and then had my first cohort the second year. So I knew that when I was making the decision and grappling with it, and we talk about mentorship, and Adam was a mentor in that process, for me, in thinking about what do I want to do when I leave the classroom, and this was such a big decision for me, and I won't be interacting with students every day anymore like Lunessa. I knew OneGoal was part of that story, and it just aligned. The stars all matched up, and I ended up on staff, and now I have a unique role where I'm able to provide insight and use all of my skills that I used in the classroom as a program director, and give the insight of a program director experience and also the fellow experience, because I still interact with many alumni, like Lunessa calls me multiple times a day. And I'm able to provide that insight as we're making decisions on the program side now that I'm on staff.
I think you highlight such an important part, which is when we talk to teachers like Morgan that are considering joining OneGoal, we say, you know, it's a 3-year commitment. But sometimes it goes on a litit longer when the students stay in touch. And I think, you know, we'll hear a little bit more about how that actually plays out over the course of the day. But I want to turn it over to Lunessa a little bit. And can you share a little bit about why you joined OneGoal? And I know, because I knew your previous school experience, that you transferred sort of halfway through your junior year into Morgan School, which isn't really the typical way our program works. But it was pretty clear that you were going to be a OneGoal fellow, and it actually all ended up working out. So can you just tell us a little bit about why you joined, how that worked, and what it meant for you?
Hi, my name is Lunessa. Reasons why that I transferred mid-year of my junior year. to Brighton High. And it was, ever since then, it was life-changing, as in I went to Roxbury Prep before going to Brighton High, a nice school, but going to Brighton High was completely different, as in the diversity, being able to be introduced to a different world, as in education-wise and academics and socially. And at first, they told me about OneGoal, but I wasn't allowed to be on OneGoal, only because they told me, oh, you don't need OneGoal, you're fine. But then I had friends who knew Miss Taylor, and they was planning a HBCU trip to Atlanta, and that's how I met her. I was like, oh my God. And they introduced me to her, and since then, history. There's no way to, I've been with her since then. My family loves her. I love OneGoal. I've been in OneGoal for so long, and honestly, I would not change my experience for nothing. OneGoal is amazing, and Mr. Seidel and Miss Taylor, I can't ask for a better team for mentor-wise, and yes, they're amazing.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm just curious because you've been with OneGoal for a long time, but your journey and your path has shifted a little bit. And so as you were in the planning stages of like, where did you want to go to school? How did sort of, and then you were a class of 2020, so the pandemic shut everything down right at sort of a critical time when you're getting acceptances and letters and all of that, and you have to make those really tough decisions. Can you just talk a little bit about how your mentorship and your relationship with Miss Taylor or Morgan, sort of like how you use that to help you navigate some of the choices you had to make?
So primarily, my first choice was to go to Clark Atlanta, the HBCU. But because of the pandemic changed everything. And because I'm a type 1 diabetic, me and my mom had to sit down and talk about it. And she was like, no, Atlanta is the hot spot of anything happening to you. And then I talked to Miss Taylor about it. And then my mom was like, are you going to live with her? Are you going to live with her in Atlanta? So how's this going to work? So it was just a lot of back and forth, as in with my mom and Miss Taylor. And my mom was like, you have to think about your health, and like, we're family. Like, I need to make sure you're here if anything happens. So that's why I ended up going to UMass Dartmouth. But I had I had the choice-ish, kind of. I was talking to Miss Taylor to see if I can transfer sophomore year to Clark Atlanta, because that was my first choice I wanted to go to. And when I got accepted, I was like, yeah, I can go. But then the pandemic put a hard stop on it, and I wasn't able to go. And then when I wanted to transfer, I looked into trying to transfer, but the credits might not have been able to transfer. The credits I already took at UMass Dartmouth. So I had to make the executive decision to just finish at UMass Dartmouth, despite me really wanting to go to Clark Atlanta. And I've had that talk with Miss Taylor. She was like, okay, she had to set down the points for me, let me know, like, I understand you want to do this. So we looked at the transfer requirements, but it's how long is it going to take to transfer all the moving pieces, and is it really worth it? So we ended up deciding to stay at UMass Dartmouth, and it's been a good decision. I honestly feel like since staying at UMass Dartmouth, I've become more involved in being able to build a new family with the help of Miss Taylor, because she told me, she was like, I know the experience is different from going to an HBCU versus UMass Dartmouth, but you are amazing. You are a social person. You make the experience. You will make the experience what you want to make it. Mm-hmm. And since then, everywhere I go, they just, there's Lunessa's in the room. There you go. There's no way to.
There's only one Lunessa in the room. Let's be clear. But I appreciate that sometimes you need the push, right? And it wasn't necessarily going to be exactly how you thought it was going to go, and yet you're finding like greatness in it, and that speaks to who you are and speaks to the work of your mentoring relationship with Miss Taylor. So I think that is awesome. I'm curious, Morgan, from your perspective, because you were sort of on the other end of some of these ups and downs and choices that had to be made. Like, how did you kind of think about what it meant to show up for Lunessa in each of those stages, or like how to be the best support that you could be through that? And if you could speak to that a little bit, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I just want to highlight Lunessa struggles with the Morgan or the Miss Taylor because she calls me neither. So she's like on this call saying, Miss Taylor? I don't think she's ever called me that. So part of mentoring her is like being a second mom. So she has always called me Mama Tete. It has been like a name that she has enlisted, and many other fellows now call me that. Acting as like a big sister because we are not that far apart in age, even though they act like we are so old. And just being present. I think actively listening to what she wanted to do, like empathizing with the fact that she wanted to be in Atlanta, realizing that I introduced her to those experiences and why she really wanted to go, and understanding all of the aspects of that. Talking to her mom and like understanding mom's fears and, why she doesn't want Lunessa to go, and knowing firsthand, and like having Lunessa's diabetes app on my phone when we're traveling together to make sure that her blood sugar is where it needs to be, and being mindful of those things, that her being far away from home and not being around anyone was not the best decision, and that she can always go to a school in Atlanta when she said she's not done. She's not finished with her undergraduate. She's going to keep going to school. So when we start applying for schools in the next round, we can look at schools in Atlanta. And she said, okay, that makes sense. And mom's like, yep, at that point, I will be okay with her leaving, and she will be fine. And she's made plans to have apartments with, fellows that one of her fellows that she was in the cohort with, she shares a room with now at UMass Dartmouth. And so they have plans to move to Atlanta and live together and have this amazing life, and, either go to school there or do a program somewhere else. But really just being present when she needs me, whenever that phone call is. If it's sometimes 1:00 in the morning, I will answer it for Lunessa. Not every fellow gets that answer, but definitely answer it for Lunessa because it's usually an emergency and she's like processing something. And just really being mindful of like what she needs to do, and being a thought partner, and realizing it's not my decision. I have made my choices and lived my life, and the adults in my life allowed me to navigate, and making sure that I'm there to help her just navigate and troubleshoot and think through what her next best steps are, and lay out some other options that she might not have thought of because she hasn't experienced that part of life yet.
Yeah, I love that. And so much resonance just to the Maya Angelou quote in that about presence and just knowing someone and focusing on that in the relationship. I'm curious because we're now hearing a lot about this sort of power triangle of Lunessa, Morgan, and mom, or mom and Mama Tete, if you will. So I'm just curious because I think that that's actually an important part of the story of mentorship, which is that mentors don't have to play every single role. And in fact, mentors really need to integrate into the student's life, right? And just would be curious to hear a little bit about how, Lunessa, you navigated having mom and Mama Tete, and then also Morgan, how you sort of navigated supporting Lunessa, but also talking to mom and building the rapport and the trust there too.
So sorry, but Mr. Seidel, can you repeat that one more time for me, please?
Yeah, I'm just curious, like how it was for you to have both Morgan and your mom as part of your team, and what that meant to sort of like have some of the advice and support from Morgan, but also, know that you're really, have to work with your mom to figure out what's possible or what's not.
Well, what helped enormously is knowing that Mama Tete was able to, she already knew me. So when I'm coming to her and talking to her, it came from a place of me genuinely like being vulnerable and like needing advice, and I can come to her for anything. As in, I wasn't scared. I wouldn't have to hide any parts because she already knew me. So she like, what are you really saying right now? It'd be like it'd be a part of, she already knows me. And like coming to my mom, she already knew me. So it was like both places I could just come and be my real, like just vulnerable, and just tell them how I feel, and they can come sit down with me and give me that tough love. And I could get that from both my mother and Mama Tete. So it really did help me a lot, because with college is a very tedious process, and if you don't have like that support system, it's really hard. And they were my real support system, as in I talked to like my friends, but in actuality, you need a support system who's been through it and they've been through it, which helped me a lot because I was able to get my thought process together, not stress as much, and which really helped me because I'm kind of a little prone to stress, as in like I panic, and when I panic, I'm all over the place. And then they were able to be like, okay, relax, I got you. It's time to breathe. Okay, breathe. And let's tackle this together, which really helped me enormously because if I didn't have that support, I honestly don't know where I would have been now. I would have probably been okay, but not really. So I just want to just say, from the bottom of my heart.
Yeah, thank you for that.
And then I can jump in and just say that building relationships with like families was important in the beginning. And so like it starts with the introduction phone call. What is OneGoal? Like, what is my role with your child? And how we're going to work as a team and kind of how we do that together. And Lunessa's mom was always like very adamant. She's like, oh, Miss Taylor's going to be there, or Miss Taylor's doing it. Okay. And so it starts with phone calls, the text messages, like Panera, like lunches to talk about grades in all of the classes and not just OneGoal. And Lunessa's like report was always glowing. It was always a pleasure to have in class. So I didn't have much to provide in regards to any feedback. But you know, those lunches that then just turned into like, this is family. And it became very easy, like where her mom is sending, you know, her to school with food for me. And, you know, being invited to family events and like, just knowing that because I take the extra time to make sure that I send out a text to her. I send a text on birthdays, like, you know, knowing something that's coming up because Lunessa has advised that this is going on in their family right now, reaching out, making sure that mom is okay. Does she need anything? You know, letting her know there's a lot going on this end and Lunessa can lean on and support in this side. And so there was like a trust built there. And then there was also like another layer of trust of her allowing Lunessa to go like on a 5-day trip out of the state with me and like having the phone calls every night. Like, is Lunessa okay? Lunessa doesn't know this part. Is Lunessa okay? Yeah, she's fine. She's good. She's like in her room with her friends. She's having a good time. So sharing her location with me. Like there was just a trust that was easily built. And that started from the foundation of making sure that in the beginning that, you know, mom and dad knew what OneGoal was and like what my role was in that and how we all needed to work together as a team to make sure Lunessa got to where she wanted to go. And making sure that I was there in the same way that I'm there for Lunessa. When they send a text, like responding back, like within an appropriate time frame, and trying to answer the questions. And if I don't have the answer, letting them know I don't have the answer, just being authentic and vulnerable as well. So that they felt like it was a give and take relationship and we could have two-way communication.
I love it. Thank you. Appreciate all of that. Lunessa, I'm curious because one of the things that's unique about OneGoal is like you have and I was talking about this earlier, but you get to see the teacher every day, right, when you're in high school. And then that sort of just goes away when you graduate. And for you all, that actually went away sooner, right? Because in March, when school shut down, you no longer were seeing Miss Taylor every day, but you had to find out different ways to communicate and connect. What have been some of the things that you and Morgan have done to stay connected? What are some of the ways in which you've been able to use, you know, phone, FaceTime or whatever, check-ins, different things to like continue to stay connected and make sure she knew what was going on for you and was able to support you in the ways that you needed?
So when school ended in March, it was actually me, her, and two of my friends who were the last ones together in the room. We were eating, we were doing everything. And then once everything finished, it was like, wow. But that didn't stop anything because it's like we FaceTime, group FaceTimes. I would be texting her. I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? She'd tell me about this assignment. And then I FaceTime her and just tell her something random. Like, so it just became as in like COVID was like a blessing in disguise, as in that's how our relationship got stronger. Because without seeing us, it grew from being a student teacher to like, you know, second mom to me just annoying her. And she's like, what? Like just me calling her and just telling her just random stuff and just being able to just let her know, like, us building a relationship even more, like growing a foundation for us of just not being more than just teacher and student, which really helps. So that's why I would say COVID was just a blessing in disguise, because before it'd be like me just FaceTime her and she'd be like, okay, yeah, sure, but now it's like there was an actual reason, as in I don't see her every day. So, and then if I'm confused about something, I tell her, and then me rambling, always have something on my mind, I just like go off topic really fast and just we'll end up in a conversation which is like far from what I originally asked about. But that really helped us to grow our relationship. So the FaceTimes, the calls, and texting just helped us. That's how it is.
And it's that care. It's the care that was in the quote, right? It's just, it's not always like, oh, did you do X, Y, and Z, or what's the agenda for this meeting? But like spending time and connecting, and I think being, together in that way, or being vulnerable in that way is so part of what I'm hearing in what you're sharing. So thank you. Morgan, I wonder, so Lunessa is one of probably, what is it, like maybe 50 OneGoal fellows that you've supported, maybe more. How do you kind of continue to track and maintain all of these relationships, with Lunessa, but also with all of the other students that you are mentoring as part of the OneGoal process?
So in their Y3 experience, it is very streamlined because OneGoal has a process. There's a cadence for check-ins. There's resources to make sure that you're doing those check-ins, guidance to make sure that you're checking in on the right things. But then once that kind of ends, it doesn't stop. Well, for me, it doesn't stop. And so they will reach out, like in the summer, they're like, hey, where's my summer supports? I'm like, well, program has ended, but I still will check in with you. I have utilized Google Calendar in a way that I have never before. There are birthday reminders in there to send birthday text messages to fellows, and Lunessa's like a testament to know that it's not like a happy birthday, it's like a brick, maybe like Seymour, of messaging to them, like, this is why I love you. Reaching out when I know like big things usually come up around that time, sending fellows messages during holidays, and then just being available when they need me to be. I did for a year, I was on maternity leave, and that time I had not that much more time, but a little bit more time than now, where I would like schedule office hours that they could pop in and we could talk, and that was across program years. And so I had alumni and Y3 fellow, and they could come in and like we would have like a Zoom lunch, and they would see my baby who was really not moving. And so like just engaging with them and allowing them to be a little bit a part of my life, and then making sure that I penciled in the time for them to do that. Trying to think of like other things like FaceTimes and group chats. I'm in a lot of group chats. There's the group chats that were started within the classroom to share like announcements, updates. These started before the pandemic, and then obviously became more necessary while we were in the pandemic to communicate with one another, because we were only meeting once a week at that point, which then would turn into like group FaceTime calls. There were subgroups that were created of group chats. So I'm probably in about 20 different group chats across the 3 cohorts of fellows, and they could range from topics of things that I don't indulge in, and things like they're like, no, Miss Taylor, we need an answer. Like, we all don't know what we're supposed to do with this. We talked about it in our other group chat and brought it to you. So just being involved in like whatever way that they want to communicate, and then also carving out time for those communication points and setting reminders, because there are a lot of birthdays and a lot of big things. And next year there will be a lot of graduations that I'm going to have to navigate around and plan to be at. Yeah, Lunessa's excited.
Lunessa's like, there's only one graduation next year. There's mine. No. And actually, this is just a plug. If folks have more questions, drop them in the Q&A or in the chat, because we are going to switch to audience questions in a second. And I know one of them, Lunessa, just as a preview, is about what your future plans are. So that's coming. But before we do that, I want to, Lunessa, give you a chance to zoom out a little bit. And there are a lot of folks on this call that are mentors or educators or invested and involved in the lives of young people. And I just would love to like give you a chance to say, like, what advice would you give to them for what you would hope other students receive in the form of mentorship through their post-secondary plan and process?
Well, one piece of advice I'd give is make sure to really build that relationship with your mentee. Because I feel as a mentee, being able to have a relationship as mentor and mentee really meant a lot to me, where I could actually open up about a lot. And I feel like nowadays with society and everything, students don't really know who they can trust, or they're scared to know who they can trust. They have a lot of things going on in life that they're afraid to come out and say what's happening. But I feel like if you build that relationship, a strong foundation, they'll be able to come to you, and you'd probably be changing their life, as in a lot of decisions that they would make if they didn't have someone to go to or turn to. They wouldn't make that. They'd think twice because they've talked to you, and then that can just change their future for the better. So I feel like actually taking your time and doing more than just mentor and mentee activities or just doing your job. I feel like you need to just really stem yourself and be their support system, and let them know that you can trust them, or they can trust you, because that was a really big part. Because you don't really, if you're stuck, as in like if I was stuck and not knowing where to go to, like, yes, I have my mom, but as in my mom, because she knew I had Miss Taylor, she was able to be on me and give me that tough love, but she also was able to just let go a little bit, because she knew that I had someone else that I can turn to, that she trusted. So she knew whatever decision I'd make, it'd be coming from a smart, authentic, genuine place, and Miss Taylor wouldn't steer me wrong. As in, she'd make sure that whatever I would be doing would be the best decision, and she knows she cares for me and loves me, so she knew she wouldn't steer me wrong, which was a really big help, as in why my mom was able to also trust. Oh, that's also another piece of advice: get to know their family. Because once the family loves you, you're in. They keep pushing for her and just pushing for the mentor, and it just, yeah. So that'd be my advice: just really get to know your mentee and know that, and let them know that they can turn to you no matter what the situation is.
Thank you. I think that is a lot for all of us to hold and consider. And Morgan, I would actually turn and ask you sort of a similar question, which is, everyone might not be able to, because of time or resources or regulations at the school or district, like do the Saturday Panera thing, or, have a group chat or FaceTime. Like, are there things that you would sort of like beyond that, or like lifting up from that you would recommend to folks that want to try to build these, sort of mentor relationships, even if some of those things aren't possible or aren't in place, that I know made sort of the relationship here so special?
Yeah, it all started in the classroom, and we had to pivot and get creative when we couldn't be in the room together, but food is king, 100%. We celebrated birthdays in the classroom, potlucks, allowing students to bring in like their cultural and family norms into the space, creating just like a set of norms and values together. And so like Lunessa talks about that trust, like that started from the classroom and from all of the fellows feeling like they could trust one another. And then like knowing that I trusted them. So being vulnerable in a space that you're with them, sharing, opportunities where you might have failed or made a mistake and someone steered you in the right direction. And so them hearing those stories made them feel more comfortable to come to me and say, Miss, I messed up. Like, we did something we shouldn't have done and we're not sure like how to fix it. Or I failed this class and I knew I should have been going to class and this is what was happening. And knowing that I was not going to judge them, they know she's made mistakes and look at where she is. We can do that as well. And then like, I can't emphasize more the family piece and just, being as active as you can in regards to family communication. So if it's sending letters home, sending updates home, we had a monthly newsletter that was sent home with updates about what was happening in our OneGoal class, or what we were focusing on that month, and the opportunities for parents to at my school, parents could come in and like shadow the classroom. And so there were opportunities for things like that to happen, for families to really know what was going on in the room and like why it was different from a regular class, because it is completely different. And the space allows you to build relationships with students. And it was one of the classes where I didn't have like full capacity, 31 students in a room. And so I could spend time during class time and like talk to students and check in with them one-on-one, or check in with them in a specific group to see what was going on. And then they got so close that they would tell me stuff. So if Lunessa didn't tell me, her friends would tell me, and I would very easily work it into a conversation to figure out what was going on. So you can definitely use class time to get that done, because that's the foundation for a full year. That's how we started.
I really appreciate that. And I think because what it says is we can make that choice, right? We can choose to create the space for students and teachers to build those relationships, or students and other folks in the building to build those relationships. We can make the choice to say yes to that, and create the space for it. We can build, like you said, like actually use that time to develop relationships, invest in them. And that can happen during the school day, which I think is, you know, sometimes folks think it can only happen outside, right? And so I think I really appreciate that reflection and that response. So we're gonna transition now to audience Q&A, and I have some of the questions from the chat starting to like get teed up. But before we do that, I have to just thank you both for putting up with my questions, at least, and sharing your story and what makes it so unique, but also what makes it universal, and what makes sort of the heart of what you all have created, and the support system and the trust and all of that, what is available to all of us, and in the relationships that we form and in the ways in which we show up for our students. And I just deeply appreciate you all for giving of your time and you're sharing more about your relationship to do that. So thank you for that. I did, as I said, Lunessa, one of the questions in the chat was, we'd love to hear a little bit about your future plans. I know you have one more year left of school, or a year and a half, but like, what are you sort of thinking? What is your next step?
Class of 2024. But my next step, it doesn't stop from there. I'll be still going to school. My next step is to go into a direct entry program to get my doctorate in nurse practitioner, to be concentrated in obstetrics. Yeah, that's so basically class 2024 for undergraduate, but class of 2020 is the end goal that I'm waiting for. I'll be done. Yes.
That's amazing. And it sounds like in your future is another round of applications and a lot more school. So the mentoring and the support can't go anywhere.
Yes, exactly. But she knows that. We've had
I know. No, I appreciate that. So Lunessa, there's actually another question for you in the chat, which was, and we talked about this a little bit, but to go a little deeper on sort of like, if you reflect back now on sort of your post-secondary journey from the high school planning all the way through to where you are now, what were some of the most meaningful points where Morgan really showed up and supported you? And if you could just speak about a couple of those, that was the question.
So, sorry, can you repeat that for me one more time?
Yeah, it's like if you go back and think about sort of starting where in your junior year and getting connected with OneGoal and building the relationship with Morgan all the way through to where you are now, what are some of the most meaningful points in that journey where Morgan was able to provide a sort of mentorship support?
Well, the first moment on the top of my head was my college essay. That was where she came and she gave me the tough love that I needed, only because the counseling center at Brighton, they were good, but they just, so many critiques, so many, do you really want to go with that? Just so many, just very discouraging. And then I told Miss Taylor, I came to her, I was like, I don't know what to do. I was like, I have my essay, I think it's good, but I have to change something. Like, I was sitting there just stressing, and she literally looked at me, she was like, hold on, breathe. Come on, you gotta breathe, relax. Let me see your essay. And she just gave me that encouragement to say, what is that? Going to the, I mean, I went there for like vouchers and what I needed, but as in college applications, I didn't really go to them because they were like very discouraging. As in, like my personal essay was about my journey, as in when I found out when I had diabetes, like the very first moment. I was 16, just turned 16. It was, when you're 16, you just found out you had diabetes, everything just completely, you feel like the world is ending. So that's how I felt. And so basically my essay was just depicting how I felt in that moment, and how I felt like having diabetes was like the end all be all. I was like, I didn't know what to do. It's going to affect me forever. And that's basically what my personal essay was about. And I was able to put that in writing. And when I gave it to Miss Taylor, she was like, this is amazing. Like I don't know what's going on with them. I don't know what they're reading that I'm not reading, like what they're seeing that I'm not seeing. But from that moment, that moment right there was just like, the core moment that I just was able to come to her for literally anything. And then another moment where Ainsley actually helped as well was my financial aid. It was a lot of mix-ups in my mom's finances and just everything put together that just made my financial aid, filling out my FAFSA was difficult, that she also showed up for me again. And I was like, oh man, at this point, I don't know why I keep going anywhere else. Like, she's the only person I need at this point. And then when I went to college and I had my first meeting with my advisor, it wasn't a difficult meeting, but it was just a meeting where I just needed to sit back and like also talk to her about it as well. And she was just like, she gave me that tough love again. So it's just every moment she just shows up and gives me the advice that I need, that tough love that I need, that where I would usually stress out and be like I don't know what to do. She came and showed up for me like no one else would. Like, I was able to tell her what was happening, and she gave me her perspective, her point of view, let me know, okay, maybe I understand this, but also give me the confidence in me to not feel like, she just continued to push me and give me the love that I need. So that was a very big part since junior year too now, because I still come to her for problems day in and day out. And she's just like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And I'm just like, where would I be without you? So.
Thank you. Thank you for that. This is a question, Morgan, that would for your PD hat, your program director hat, but also your staff hat now. And someone put in the chat that we're finding that responses to text messages are way down. Knowing that people got very tech saturated during the pandemic. Do you have any thoughts or tips on how to ensure that can be an effective tool for also supporting mentorship?
Yeah, so from a staff side, being mindful of how many text messages fellows are receiving is very important. So from staff, we send out messages, and program directors send out messages, and then they're probably getting messages from whatever pathway that they've chosen to enter. So the ones that we seem to get the most responses from, now that I'm on this end, is like the wellness checks. So just checking in on how they are as a person. And that was also true and consistent as a program director, was when I reached out to them to schedule time just to talk about what was going on. And that was like the line, hey, do you have like 15 minutes just to check in? I want to see what's new, what's going on in your life. It's Miss Taylor annoying you. And that's it. Like, I want to just celebrate your wins. Those responses were faster, as opposed to me asking to see their syllabi and like what because if their grades weren't great, they weren't going to answer me. Figuring out a way to connect to them and understand like what is going on with them as a person at that point. And then you can weave in all of the other deliverables that you need in that conversation. But the first one is just like, hey, just checking in what's going on, or like sending, Lunessa keeps me on, so she sends me on TikToks. So like that can also be a connection point of like, did you see this one? Okay, hey, great. So what happened with that class? And they're already responding to you. So the relationship needs to be there. The rapport needs to be there. I find that the cold call text messages are the ones that go kind of unanswered. So if there's some connection piece that you can find, if there's a relationship there, if you can like connect on, I've sent fellows links to like certain things, because in class we talked about like that they love Uggs and there's an Ugg sale. Like, hey, did you see this Ugg sale? Great. So let's talk about that thing that we were supposed to talk about last month. And I know that you're responding and reading my messages because you just responded to this. So just finding like different alternative connection points and things that they might be interested in to get the conversation flowing. And then you can like continue to weave in the things that you might need to advise them towards for their next.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Sort of following up on part of what Lunessa was sharing before, there was a question about sort of what are some of the items that folks would discuss, like that you would actually get into from a mentorship perspective. And it sounds like there was the personal statement and the essay support on that, thinking about your college list and where you're applying, ultimately like weighing financial aid and where you're going to go. And then also just sort of some of the problem solving that comes along the way. So just Morgan, I don't know if there, you know, in the last few minutes, if there's anything else that you would add in places that you really sort of like try to support from a mentor perspective through the journey.
Yeah, I think the big thing was like navigating decisions, because they're getting a lot of information in OneGoal. And so the curriculum is built out in a way that makes sure that they hit everything they need to hit in order to make the best decision. And I think the part that gets tricky for them is when they're deciding, they are 17 and 18, making big life decisions, that it is okay to change your mind, and it is okay not to know what you want to do 100%. And if you get there and try it and it doesn't work, we can pivot, and making sure that they understand like that is important, and that is consistently layered throughout like the whole process and program in OneGoal, is knowing that they can change their mind, knowing that they have someone to go to do that, and making sure that you're intentional in those conversations. Like, this is the plan. And so what are your thoughts if it doesn't work, right? And because it might not work. And so what is the backup plan? And Lunessa was very firm on, I don't have a backup plan because I'm doing this. And I said, okay, all right, so we're going to do it at the highest capacity that we can. And so making sure that you're having those conversations with them in that mentorship piece, that they know that they can change their mind, they can alter their path. It can take longer than the 4 years, and that's okay. As long as they are communicating, and that they know that they have someone to communicate to. And if they're a part of OneGoal, like that they are OneGoal fellow forever. And so there's always someone that they can connect with. So I think that's the big piece.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great way for us to close out. There was one other question about how can volunteers who might not be teachers by profession fit into OneGoal, and would love to follow up with the person that said that. Please reach out to our website. There are lots of opportunities in our regions to engage with OneGoal. So in Massachusetts, we invite folks into some of our classrooms to meet with students and share their story. So just we'd be excited to continue to brainstorm other ways to get involved. So that is for the person who asked that question, but also for everyone. And so if you want to get involved with OneGoal in different ways, please reach out to us directly. We would love to do that. Before we transition to close, I want to just do one more huge thank you, Lunessa and Morgan, for taking the time, sharing your story, and honestly, just for like really, I think, helping to inspire what is possible. And so I am looking forward to your 2024 and 2028 graduations, but honestly, really just looking forward to continuing to hear the story of how you guys stay connected and stay working together. So thank you both. And we'll wrap up really quick. I want to just share a few more things as we close out today, and mostly, you know, say thank you to everyone who joined and made this a rich discussion, and hope you got some inspiration and some practical ideas and just got to know OneGoal a little bit better. You know, want to just say, like, we invest in mentorship because it actually works. And you heard that story today, but it is true across all of our classrooms, across all of our regions, all of our partner schools. I know we're joined by some of our partners, and we feel incredibly privileged to work in and with you, in your schools and with you. The OneGoal fellows enroll at a far higher level than their peers in other low-income areas, and continue to persist 1 year after high school graduation. So through that mentorship and some of the challenges of that first year, we see our students continuing to persist at much higher rates. So again, want to just thank everyone in the audience for joining us today.